Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre, and I'm your book dragon, whatever you want to call me. Today is holding the mic day. Don't know why, don't ask me. Just feels like it. And so let's hope that the sound is good. But we're back in the channel for one more review. This is probably gonna come out after Christmas, so I hope you had a lovely Christmas, and I hope 2025 starts wonderfully for you. I don't know if there will be many more videos because I'm on holidays at the moment, but yeah, I wish you all the best reads and that you achieve your reading goals, page goals, whatever goals you do for 2025. But let's get on to the actual review that we're talking today, which is Terry Pratchett. We're back into the Discworld and we're reviewing Sourcery. So yeah, we're back to the Discworld. It's been a long time since I read anything Terry Pratchett related, but we're finally here. And yeah, Sourcery is a fantasy book set up in the Discworld, which is Terry Pratchett's big universe where it had several series all spent in the same land, which is the Discworld, and all these series kind of intersect each other. Think like the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the Cosmere of Brandon Sanderson's. But yeah, so Sorcery is the fifth book in the Discworld, not the fifth one in a series, but just the fifth one to be published. Because if we look at the actual sub-series this book belongs to, it's the third one in the Rincewind saga, which is actually part of the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic books that I've reviewed here on the channel. You can check it out with the thumbnails popping around or clicking the cards above. But yeah, I've reviewed those books. I actually thought that those books were just this part of themselves, this own isolated series, and nothing else would happen with these characters, but apparently something happens. So Sorcery was initially published in 1988, and since then it has gathered over 103,000 ratings, which, if we consider in absolute terms, it's a lot of ratings. To consider over time, I'm not sure it would be. I mean, almost 40 years or 24 years in 103,000 ratings. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's the best rating that we have, but it's also not the worst. However, the average score it has, it's a 3.91 out of 5, and that tells me that it's indeed not the best one in the Discworld. I should actually do a video comparing all the Discworld scores that I gave with the Goodreads scores, see how it balances it out, but that's for me to do a long time from now because I haven't read that many Discworld novels. I think probably 7, 8 maybe, and I need to read a lot more to be well versed in the Discworld. But before we jump into the review, let's just go through our housekeeping items. The first one is the synopsis. I'm going to read the synopsis. If you don't want to hear anything about it, then just skip to the timestamp that is floating around. You'll jump all after the synopsis, won't hear anything, any spoilers whatsoever. Otherwise, if you want to hear me narrate it, just stick around and I'll try to narrate it for you in a good voice, I guess. There was an eighth son of an eighth son. He was, quite naturally, a wizard, and there it should have ended. However, for reasons we'd better not go into, he had 7 sons. And then he had an eighth son, a wizard squared, a source of magic, a sorcerer. Alright, that was the synopsis. Quite short and sweet, like we love it. And the other housekeeping item that we have to go through is just go through the scores of the previous books, because after all, this is the third book in the Rincewind saga, and we kind of have to look at the other two to see how it is progressing. Although I'm not sure if they really matter, because after reading Sourcery, I realized that the first and second books are kind of paired together as one full story, and this one is quite separate, which is very Discworld-esque, where even books that are within the same sub-series, they tell separate stories, and most of the times they're not continuous. So take these scores however you want, but just to say that The Color of Magic, which is the first book, it had an okay score. I didn't really enjoy it in the same way that I've enjoyed other Discworld novels, probably because the writing wasn't exactly the same, and also because I didn't get the intent of the book when I started reading it. And that kind of shapes your perspective upon it. But I mean, the score was still positive, it's just that the second book fared a bit better. But now let's see how the third book compares with the first two. Starting off with plot, this book, as many others in the Discworld, as I've noticed, they have two main POVs happening, or two main plot lines, let's say. In this book, on one side, we follow the events that are happening at the Unseen University and regarding the sorcery that has occurred, without giving many spoilers. And on the other hand, we have Rincewind, who's just being Rincewind and being transported into the hands of destiny and going on his own adventures. And it might seem that they're not related at all, but of course that eventually they become related in one way or the other. And I thought that both plotlines were fun and engaging and easy to read. However, I had a slight preference for Rincewind's plotline. Even though I think Rincewind's plotline was less serious in terms of stakes, and I think maybe it was just a bit more engaging than the Unseen University plotline. And what I thought was, while the Rincewind plotline was funny and it had good references and good jokes altogether, the Unseen University one felt just okay, not reaching that good level. I think nonetheless, this is a good plotline for both sides, and I think it has a lot of fun remarks, so don't think that one is bad, the other one is good. Both are good, one is just better than the other, so for this category I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Our next category is characters, and I think Terry Pratchett usually excels in this category. I think Terry Pratchett is brilliant at creating the most random characters, but at the same time at characterizing them so well that they become so distinct from each other, and you can love and have fun with each one of them independently. I mean, we have characters that we have seen before, like Rincewind, Death, the librarian, and all of those have that comfortable sense of funny. You know more or less what to expect from them, and it brings you this familiar sense of comedic timing and comedic jokes. But then at the same time in this book, we have other characters like Konina and Nigel that are new and bring a breath of fresh air into the characters, but they are just as funny as the ones we already know. And in my opinion, I think if you read this book and you didn't chuckle at least, or a little when you read parts of this book, I don't know what's going on in your mind. Some parts are so absurd, they're so funny, and I think that is mostly being pushed through by the characters. And I think this was one of the key points that made me enjoy the Rincewind plotline more than the Unseen University, was that Rincewind was going through a lot more new experiences, new characters, and it allowed for more funny moments to emerge and for me to experience. But anyway, I think I made my point across, which is characters in this book still excellent. Terry Pratchett still maintains his mastery in character categories, so it's going to be a 5 out of 5. What about world building? Well, again, because we have this plot split into two, we explore two very different parts of Discworld. On one side, we focus mostly on the Unseen University, everything that is happening around it, and on the other one, we have Rincewind again exploring the Discworld as he has done in the previous two books. So we do get a bit of that balance between the comfortable of exploring a place, or really not exploring, but just being in a place that we already know, versus exploring new things. And I think that even though the Unseen University was cool to see, there wasn't much characterizing of that part, and it was more about the magic in that sense, or what was happening to the magic, which is still great, but I'm not sure if it was because of the plot that it didn't click as well with me. The Unseen University world building seemed a bit less dedicated as it was in Rincewind's plotline, where we were exploring very different places from one chapter to the next, and it felt more engaging and more vivid, let's say. So I think for the world building category, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Maybe it's a lower 4 than it has been before, but still a 4 nonetheless. It's just maybe a little bit. Not a 4 as strong as the plot was, let's say. Moving on to writing style, this category felt a bit weird, and that's because I felt that the writing style was regressing a bit towards the Color of Magic writing style type. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it was fully back there, So it was this kind of in between, as if Terry Pratchett was transitioning from the absurdist without logic writing style to the absurdist with some logic writing style, which I mean is just a difference between his origins and the point where he wrote the Death series. And what I mean by the different types of absurdism is just that I felt that at the start of the Discworld with The Color of Magic, Terry Pratchett's books, the absurdism was very chaotic. It was just absurd, kind of like Douglas Adams in A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There seems to be a lot of absurd things without logic. I know that if it's absurd, it doesn't need logic, but I think you know what I mean. Whereas the more recent books, it also has absurdism, but it comes with a sassiness to it, a twist, a sarcasm, or just some logic that once you think it makes sense. It's absurd, but it makes some kind of sense. So I like more that second style. But I mean, both types are completely valid, and I know people that prefer the first one over the second. It's just a matter of taste for you. However, in this particular book, I did feel like we were jumping between one type of absurdism to the other type of absurdism. And maybe Terry Pratchett was just experimenting, trying to figure out which one works better, both with the readers and with himself, and so that's why we see this duality. Aside from that, I felt like the pacing was good. I mean, both plot lines had good and bad points in terms of pacing, but I think they balanced it out quite well. So for writing style, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And our last category, which is enjoyment. I read this book quite quickly, in less than 4 days, I think, and that's quick for me since I don't read super fast. But for me, that means that I really enjoyed this book. But at the same time, I wasn't crazily reading it and thinking, oh my god, this is so funny, I just want to read more and more and find excuses to read more. So I was in that space where it's good, I'm having fun when I'm reading it, but I'm not looking for excuses to read it. Of course, I'll still be looking forward to reading it when the time comes, but not finding excuses to read more. And I think that was mostly driven by one of the plot lines. I think if both plot lines had the same high quality, I would be a lot more driven to read it. But I mean, it's still Terry Pratchett, it still makes me laugh, so I think that is a good sign, and I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And that leads us to the end of our review. Just as a refresher, we have 4 for plot, 5 for characters, and then 4 for world building, writing style, and enjoyment. That gives us a final score of 4.2 out of 5. So we're kind of in between the first 2 books, with the second one being a bit higher than the first and the third. And it's also positive in the sense that it's higher than the Goodreads, or it means that I like this book a lot more than the average Goodreads person. At the same time, do I think this is the best that Terry Pratchett has to offer? Not really. I think this was a good book. I wouldn't recommend it for first-time readers of Terry Pratchett. I wouldn't recommend it as an entry to the Discworld. But for a seasoned reader, someone who has read, I don't know, 3-4 books of Discworld, I think this one is a good one to go. And I think that's especially important if you've read other Rincewind books. And actually, it's what's pulling me to read more Rincewind books, because I think Rincewind is so charming. He's such a funny character, and I definitely want to see more of him throughout the Discworld. So do with that what you may, but comment down below. Do you enjoy this book? Have you read it? Have you not? I want to hear your opinions, and if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and I'll be showing here on Thursdays and Sundays, except for this period where I'm on holidays. And then again, have an amazing entry into 2025. All right, see you soon.